Hey, welcome to another episode of HR Nightmares. I am leaning into my authoritative pose here. For those of you watching on YouTube, if I lean back and cross my legs, I look like a toddler. My name is Leath, and I'm the host here, and I'm co-hosted with Amy Conway and Beth Looney, and we have a really fun guest. Can't wait to hear all your stories and fun experiences you're going to share with us. This is Justin Robbins. He's my neighbor. He's my friend, neighbor and friend, but he's also like an extraordinary speaker on CX, aka customer experience. I think that's kind of a new term for anybody who doesn't work in customer experience. It's customer support, customer success, all mixed into one thing. It translates in all different industries. If you don't know Justin Robbins, make sure you look him up on LinkedIn. He's going to tell us how to get a hold of him at the end of the episode. But welcome. Thank you for coming.
It's good to be here. This is
HR
awesome.
Nightmares.
Welcome. We're glad you're here.
I've had many HR nightmares, so this is
Most people have. You know, that's like why at first when we started doing HR Nightmares, I think it's been almost 2 years ago now, people were like, oh, that's like a terrible name for a podcast. It sounds so negative. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what everybody, like that's the reason why I started the business in the first place. It was because everybody had an HR nightmare and they were coming to me to solve them. And so it was like, you know what? I'm gonna start to get paid for this. Yeah. So that's why we started the podcast. It was like, come get some free advice on your HR nightmares. And, you know, we love solving people's problems. We are HR experts. We're not your HR expert, but we'd love to be your HR expert. So, again, the ladies here from Leath HR Group. And why don't you fully introduce yourself? Tell us where you're at now with 8x8 and like what you're doing, what you're up to, where you're speaking, how we find you, and how you landed on this journey in this seat.
Totally. So I've always thought of myself as a bit of a customer experience mutt. And I've told the story a bunch, but it all started, so I was 12 years old, I had a paper route, I got a call from my boss and she said, how would you like to earn some extra cash in the evening? I'm thinking, sure, what do I have to do? She said, you show up at the newspaper, we'll explain it from there. Walked in, there was a giant stack of dot matrix printer paper with the name, address, and phone number of everybody in my hometown. And as a 12-year-old, I got cash under the table to interrupt people's dinner times and try to sell newspaper subscriptions. So the story starts there. And fast forward, look, I have been fascinated with what it takes to understand and serve customers really well. And I've been fortunate to do that inside of organizations leading contact centers or front of house service teams and a bunch of different things that is all this moment where everything a brand promises and wants and says and dreams and desires, it happens or it doesn't because all of those promises are fulfilled or not by one individual in one moment of time, right? So started there. Got into training and consulting and working with teams around the globe on this big idea of what does it mean to define a great experience. And it might be for a customer, it might be for an employee, it might be for a patient, it might be for a constituent, right? What does that take? And got to do that, fell into research, and was at a point where I was finally like, look, I've run customer experience teams, I've gotten to teach customer experience teams. Technology is a big part of what they do. And for the better part of 5 years have worked with a number of technology companies, including right now 8x8, working with our customers, our partners, our sellers, our marketers, trying to just really understand what is shaping this idea of customer experience. And you said it's a lot of things, and it's even for people who do CX, often it's very confusing to them. They don't know what they're doing. So how do we just understand what it means to define it? Then once we define it, how do we deliver it? And once we deliver it, how do we figure out whether or not it's having impact? That's probably the easiest way I can describe what this journey's been. But as you mentioned, it's honestly just a lot of traveling and meeting with people and helping them figure out who are they serving, and how do they go after serving them well.
Yeah.
So customer experience, I mean, like you come from Nordstrom, the ultimate customer experience.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you, so I worked, for almost 20 years at Nordstrom, and so our whole life was customer experience. We had customer experience teams. That was what we based our business on, right? And I think the biggest thing that we always knew was, A, the customer was number one, and B, it's an ever-changing environment, right? And so it's one of those, you set a roadmap of what you're going to do, and then it shifts because you get different feedback from customers. It's like, hey, you're not on track, right? And the customer just changes so much. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the current market of what you're doing around what are the biggest things from a customer experience? What are people asking for? What are the couple of key trends that people are defining as a great customer experience?
First off, Nordstrom, great example of extreme ownership. There's a story, are you probably the tire story? Somebody brought tires in. It's true.
It's a great story that's gotten really embellished over time.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
So the short version is somebody brought tires to return to a Nordstrom, and Nordstrom has been known for very customer-centric policies. Brought them, and of course Nordstrom has never sold tires at any point. They accepted the return. It, as you mentioned, has been embellished over time. A Nordstrom was built where a tire store used to be. He was convinced that he had gotten them there. He did at the building, but anyway, interesting example of extreme ownership, which actually is segueing into this idea of trends. One of the biggest trends right now, before we talk about technology or process, is really trying to figure out where does ownership of the customer belong? Because you've got these different parts of a business. From a CX standpoint, you've got marketing, who's often responsible for creating promises for what a customer experiences. Of course, you've got operations who deliver on those promises. But then there's a massive just kind of rift right now is if we think about the people side of CX, so often you've got individuals who never aspired to be in this role. It's often very just like not well compensated. It's often just viewed in a very insignificant way. So of course there's this like challenge of what do we do with those people? Do we bring in technology, and do we like those people don't do a good job, or whatever all the negative kind of ideas are around it? Do we elevate their role? Well, if we elevate their role, we're going to have to pay them more. They're going to do more complicated stuff. In theory, it's really great, but from something that's often entry level and very transactional, I mean, that has a ton of implications on staffing and hiring and a whole like. So one challenge right now is who owns the customer, because who owns the customer defines what we do with technology and people and process. So that's one of the big trends is like, where does it actually live in an organization? Some organizations have a chief customer officer, very few actually do. And even when they do, that person isn't responsible for the whole life cycle. They might be responsible for things like net promoter scores or surveying or things like that, but nothing bigger. Second, technology, of course, is around, we've probably all sitting on these couches or watching or listening to this have played with ChatGPT and what's going on with generative AI. I use the example recently, I've been with a bunch of leaders. The question's asked, what are you doing with generative AI? And most people aren't. Everybody's trying to figure out what it could do, but they're not actually doing with it. So what happens with AI and automation is a big one. The third, and it always has been in CX, is this just like, what do we do in terms of employee engagement and part of the business that always has really, really high turnover? How do we address this problem? We've talked about it as an industry for as long as I've been part of it, and yet numbers only seem to be getting worse, not better.
Yeah.
So that to me is a perpetual trend. But it's like, what do we do there?
People are getting worse, not better. So it's hard. They're the ones that deal with people, and it's not easy. I mean, that's just the truth of it. Customers are getting more challenging. Even in the businesses that we support and work with, clients are getting more difficult. Owners are it's just. The environment is just changing a little bit, and it's not a super big surprise that, the people that take all of that feedback and are doing all that transactional stuff at the front line, it's not an easy job. And you're right, they don't get paid that much in order to be handling people on the other end of the phone, usually not being very happy when they're talking to them.
The other thing is that they kind of sort of just land into that position, right? It's not, maybe, I'm generalizing, but it doesn't seem like a lot of frontline people would be like, oh, this is what I want to, this is what my goal aspiration is.
How many high school kids have you talked to about like, hey, this is a career that you could go into, customer support?
Yeah.
It's not. It's on nobody's vision.
Right.
Zero.
No vision boarding on this idea.
So you've got people that are just.
I'd love to work at that call center.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
seriously, and then all of a sudden,
No.
they're the ones that are holding.
But
this
it's such a
important piece of
critical
your
job because
business.
it is the front line
Yeah.
of customer service. So
Yeah.
it's a critical job.
It's so interesting because nobody aspires to be there. And so when I think about how did people land there, I think about employees like Haley, who Haley had just gotten her education degree and no schools were hiring. And after we brought her on board, I asked everybody, I was like, hey, what is it that brought you here? Like, what is it that brought you here? And she's like, well, Justin, I just, you were hiring and I figured this would work until I found a real job. Daggers. I think about Scott, who after a 30-year career in radio, best phone interview I ever did, he was an on-air talent. After 30 years and radio stations going to nationally syndicated shows, Scott lost his job. And so he didn't know, and so it was a place for him to land. Or somebody who said, hey, I've got a marketing degree, and I love your brand, I want to be a part of your business, and I think the best way to do that is to understand your customer. It's not where anybody aspires to be. So many people land there, but increasingly, organizations are recognizing, hey, this can be a strategic part of our business if we leverage it in the right way. So I don't think you're actually Purdue University, the only college that I've found in the globe that actually has a program around contact center. But no, it's not. People just land there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, I mean, that's what I said when I started working for Nordstrom, and then 18 years later, I was leaving Nordstrom, right?
That's the story.
So that's the story of if you go and you pull all the great leaders of Nordstrom and ask them how they entered into the company, it was always like, well, I'm going to sell, because you always start with selling, right? You have to, the customer's number one on the pyramid, and then the salespeople are number two, so you got to learn that job. That's what everyone would say, and those are the people leading the organization are like, well, I just did this until I got my real job, or I found something else, or I started in summertime. So a lot of that was just about the company and the culture and the environment there, and people stuck around. Like, my 18 years was an average. That was not a phenomenon to be there for 18 years. That was an average of what people were there. But I think that what I look at from I remember the nature of that business has changed a little bit, so the teams have changed in the setup, but the customer service team that used to work when we had like customer service kind of centers in all of the stores, those were some of the best people in the store, and many times those people started on the selling floor somewhere. They maybe preferred the less sales part of it, but they were great at the customer service side, but they weren't as strong of like just competitive selling and stuff. And then we moved them into customer service, and they actually did earn a lot higher hourly rate than a lot of the other support departments in those store locations, because that was a really critical job. Because if the customer was bypassing the sales team and going to customer service, there was usually some kind of a problem, right? So that was kind of the middle ground between like the sales team that was one-on-one with customers and management getting involved. And a lot of times they detracted all that, and I didn't have to go out there and solve the problem because they were so great. Yeah. But it was important that we paid them for the value of what they did.
So we all acknowledge that no one wants to get into customer support. Sometimes people end up there, but like, we also appreciate that they're in critical roles, and they're the face of the company and the brand of the company to our clients when they're in a bind usually. So like, what is the future of elevating customer experience or customer support roles? Like, what's the right thing to do to attract the right people and make sure that they're trained up and going to give your customers the experience you've visioned for your own company? Like, how do we do that? Where do we start? Paying them is one thing, but how do we let them feel like their job is just more than solving tickets or like volume of tickets, and they can have like a really good relationship with the company?
Yeah. So answering that question, I think, goes back to an earlier statement that was made about people are getting worse. What I have seen happen is a few things. One, all of us as consumers, patients, employees, it doesn't matter, we have better access to more information than we ever had, and that's only accelerated. So our awareness and understanding and ability to help ourselves has only increased. And I'll speak for myself in this one, but my tendency when I do that is believe that I know the best way of what's for me, and then any other expert, there's no way they could have researched as good as I have. Turns out that's not the case. But we as humans fall into that, right? We're like, yeah, I can figure this out for myself. And so that's it. So number one, that just understanding, I think, has gotten elevated. Second, the tools that are available, if you think about all of the ways, what I think is complex about customer experience, it's not just about the contact center, but it's every interaction a customer has with a brand. right? And how they feel about those things. And that happens across so many channels or modalities, right? You're on your cell phone texting with someone about something, you are on a website, you are hanging out in their store, like whatever it is. So people who now know more, but are interacting with brands in a way that, for us, we just think of it as Nordstrom's or whatever, but there's a ton of technologies and teams that are often very disparate and very disjointed. And we've all been in a situation where you have to repeat yourself, or one person tells you something and somebody else tells you something else. So the disparity of information and knowledge is at an all-time high. People are more aware, things are more disparate and more complex and more complicated. So now let's get to that employee, because what does it mean to elevate them? The first thing that we've got to do is actually get our own house in order as businesses. Every year I survey a couple thousand frontline employees and supervisors in customer-facing roles, outside of a bad boss, which is why you would expect most people leave. The second most common reason cited for somebody quitting their job or feeling disengaged or apathetic is because they don't feel like they've been given the tools or resources to actually be successful. I've got this customer who knows all these things, but they know before I do. Or they're telling me they've said this, but I don't have any visibility into what they said to who. So from a house in order standpoint, like, that has to happen first. I think organizations need to look at their processes, they need to look at their systems and their strategy around how do we understand and serve customers. Because that doesn't matter. It's actually only going to get worse if you pay someone more or get someone more kind of knowledgeable or effective in navigating complex and nuanced situations, and you still give them crappy tools, like, bad. So that piece has to happen first. The second, I always think about this problem in terms of, like, every single one of us as employees are thinking about four things, right? What do I get for joining this organization? And especially in contact centers, they're thinking about, what are my hours? What is my comp? What are my benefits, right? All of those types of things. What are the tools I have available? Then they're also trying to understand what can I give? And again, people that I've always met that come into these customer experience types of roles, like, they are wired to help. They are wired to serve. Like, they want to understand how they're gifting, and it may not be a degree, but it's a passion, or it's a desire to see people be successful, or see them not be frustrated or upset. Like, how can I apply that to my job? And often organizations delay an employee's ability to actually do that when they're in a CX role. The third thing then is trying to understand, so it's what do I get, what do I give, it's do I belong? And again, I'm trying to think about, like, how do we get these employees to that place? We have to figure out, like, hey, I never aspired to be here, so I've got this pre-wiring to say, like, I never saw myself here. Nobody talks about it in college. So my belief going in is that I don't belong here. So again, part of what I think we have to figure out as leaders is how do we create that sense of belonging? And it's not just about parties or one-on-ones, but, like, actually connecting to, like, no, this is a meaningful organization or a meaningful team. And then, to me, it's answering the questions of, like, how do we grow, right? That I believe is, like, if I've got somebody who can come into an organization and say, like, oh, I want to be a part of making this thing bigger and better than myself, like, awesome. It's got to begin with system and process, and then get really clear around, you've got somebody who now is going to be even smarter, who doesn't want to, they still don't want to be here. It doesn't matter that the easy stuff is gone. They're still wrestling with all these things.
Or do you ever think that they need to have more of a understanding of why their particular job, why when they're there for 8 hours in the day, how that will benefit the company? I think sometimes that conversation doesn't happen to that group. I worked at a call center once. I was the HR manager at a call center, and they didn't really understand
what their impact was.
or what they were doing, and
The
how it
value.
was, like, integrating into the final for the whole reason of being there.
Not sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah.
It was really
Yeah.
frustrating. So I
So-
would try to be like, this is important, but, you know.
Think about how we reinforce this. So we've got these core values or vision, whatever mission that we, like, corporately we put that out there. Now, if I'm working in the contact center, what is my attachment to that? Because here's what happens. I am measured on, I have quality assurance, right? We've all heard your call may be monitored for quality assurance purposes. So I've got a form of things that they're hoping happen inside of that interaction that have nothing to do necessarily with our core values or our purpose or our mission.
Exactly.
They have to do with this interaction. Okay, well, maybe I have one-on-ones or I have coaching or I have an annual evaluation. My observation in most organizations, contact center employees, their only touch to those corporate values are if they're aligned to an annual review process. Then if I'm the manager or supervisor, every year I am backing into, oh, we've got this value, that selfless spirit of service. What were all the things on the quality form or on this that were selfless, like, no, I don't feel attached to that at all in any way, shape, or
And then
form.
you're just punching it. You're
Yeah.
I'm in, I'm out. It doesn't matter because I don't really matter. People
Yeah.
don't think that I matter here.
I think like at Nordstrom, I think the one thing why we succeeded, and now I have a really hard time being the customer because I have Nordstrom expectations of service, which is just unreasonable for everybody else. But one of the biggest values, we were customer obsessed. That was the number one value, obviously. And why we were is because we were empowered. We empowered everyone to say yes. I'm like, you don't need my permission to make that customer happy. That means you have to give away something for free, not charge that. Whatever you need to do, I mean, use good judgment, obviously. But we empowered, and why I get frustrated now on the customer end is because I'm like, I know that if I called into the call center at Nordstrom.com and something went missing, or like I was kind of challenging them one day because I sent 2 returns and they only returned 1 item. I'm like, trust me, the other item was in the box. Like, do you want to look up my history with company? Like, I'm trustworthy. I'm not trying to take advantage. I still own a lot of stock in the company. I'm not trying to rip you off here. So it was one of those, and that person on the other end of the line, no problem. I'll go ahead and credit. What was the other item that was missing? No problem, right? And that's Nordstrom. I go and challenge somebody else with something like that, and it's like, well, I have to call this person, and well, I can't do that, and well, I have to put a ticket in, I have to research it. I'm like, none of that is my problem. You fix this. I called you. You're on the other end of the phone. That's where
Well,
I'm very
also
nice.
where
I'm not as mean as I'm
my
saying
customers
now
are-
because I have empathy for that job.
Customers
But
they are getting.
But that's
angrier
why,
and
yes,
angrier.
because then you have people out there where it's like you have some that understand. It's not just Nordstrom that gives that kind of service, right? There's a lot of,
Patagonia.
yes, there's a lot of places out there that give that kind of service to the customer, like take care of the customer. But then when you have other places that don't, that's why people on the receiving end get yelled at, right?
Yeah.
But these companies have got to empower the people that are taking those phone calls and taking care of the customer to actually take care of the customer.
Because that's the thing, that employee wants to help you, but there is a process or policy. There's something
Right.
getting in the way of their ability
And-
to do it. It is not the person
Yeah,
you're
and
talking to
good-
that's like,
you're-
no, forget you.
You're going to get yelled at every time the minute you go, well, our policy, just welcome the screaming
And
going
then
on
think
the
about
other
that
end.
from the employees'
Yes.
experience side. They're
It's awful.
Like, this is
Yeah, it's
awful. I've been
terrible.
yelled
No
at
one
3
wants to
times.
go
Like,
to work
this
to
is
get yelled at all
terrible.
day. Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a question since you're
Go.
the guru? What drives me really crazy, this is so off topic, but when you talk to someone and they're like, okay, I'm going to have to transfer you, and then you transfer, and then you have to repeat the entire thing,
Yeah, I think that's
but you heard them typing it in, why do they do that? Drives me nuts. Like, do they not see the notes? I just was transferred with all of this information, and it's starting off from square one. And we can talk about that offline if this is not appropriate for HR nightmares.
No, this is real
That
life.
drives
This is
me-
the struggle.
That drives me bananas.
This is the
The
struggle.
CX struggle.
So part of it is they're operating off of different systems of record. So the person you're talking to did make notes so that if anybody inside of their department, or there's lots of reasons that can happen, but within their system, like, there is that piece there. This is actually a common conference topic because it's happening with self-service a lot. People are using chat, and the same thing, like the chat system is different than the phone system. But often you've got different systems of record, or you've got somebody who is just kind of rushing to like get you engaged, and whether through training or process or whatever, otherwise, like they're it drives everybody nuts. It drives the people inside of the organizations nuts.
Yeah.
If I were to say, like, what are one of the like overarching themes from a strategy standpoint that if you attend, like if you all were like, hey, let's hang out at a CX conference, that idea of knowing the customer and being able to like maintain context throughout, that's something a lot of organizations are thinking of, but they struggle just because of system disparity.
Let me give you a perfect example. So, like in our software company, We have the implementation consultants, are the project managers that basically go to the client and say, I'm going to show you how to use this software. I'm going to put all your data in it. It's going to take 5 months, but at the end of 5 months, you're going to be live. Okay. Well, they're communicating with the new client over email, Outlook. Okay. When the client goes live, then we start using Zendesk to log customer support tickets and Churn Zero to basically capture all the notes about that client. Well, it would have been nice if like implementation had been using Zendesk and or Churn Zero, and like that's on our project list of to-dos, right, as a growing software company. But it is a problem because a lot of the training issues that maybe the new client had during onboarding, the customer success manager that's now going to be their proactive relationship account manager has no history, right? Because you can't pull all that stuff from Outlook. So it is a legit.
It's legit. They're not just sticking.
They're
it
not
to you.
just trying to make your life frustrating.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel like that though sometimes?
Don't you just know if someone
But
is
again,
recording you, you
none
just
of
don't know
this
'cause you're
is the
like,
customer's problem, right? So if you're the customer on the other end, I would be like, well, get your stuff in order. That's not my problem. I still
Yeah.
need you to solve my problem.
Yeah,
which
go
is,
back
this
and listen to
doesn't
the
work.
recording.
Right.
You know
Or
what I
I'm
find
missing
out a
this or
lot
whatever.
in
Right.
HR is payroll platforms.
Oh Lord, yes.
Enough said.
Yeah,
That is the worst.
yeah. They must pay their people terribly.
They
I mean,
must,
every
because
single
you're like,
payroll
I have
platform.
to say this exact thing again. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're just getting madder and madder, and then you're looking on the side. What other companies can I hire to take care of booting you guys out?
But software transitions are painful, right? And so there's a whole change management component to that. That's like I just don't want to deal with it. Like I'll just keep dealing with the shitty customer support that I'm getting. So you can always request a credit.
Just a little tip for
Just
you.
a little tip.
So when you're working with your customers, your clients, do you look at some of the maybe exemplary companies that have had excellent, like which ones? Because Nordstrom, obviously, we know about, but what are some of the other ones that you feel have exemplary customers?
So here's
Customer experience.
Yeah, so here's what's interesting about this. So I'm gonna like compare two different things that for this example. So have any of you ever been to a Dick's Last Resort?
Yeah, I hate
Yes.
that place.
What's the point of Dick's Last Resort?
I don't.
Piss you off.
To
Yeah.
make you like.
They
It's
make
so-
fun of you. They write
I
stupid
hate
things.
that
They
place.
throw things
It's
at you.
terrible.
What did they put on your hat?
Oh, I don't remember. It was so. I was young and I was with my parents, and I'm like, this is so inappropriate. I don't pay you money so you can be mean to me. Like,
We need to get somebody from Dick's Last Resort
Ugh.
on here.
why do people like that? I don't know.
People
I
do,
don't know.
right? But that's a restaurant, and that's a customer experience that
Terrible.
they set. Like that's their entire focus, right?
And they franchised it.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
only that, but they
They're smart.
franchised it, right? What do I do there though? I go and I have dinner, and that my customer experience is like very different. Whereas if we were to walk somewhere here in downtown Wilmington, and we were to try to think about like one of the nicest restaurants here, and it's like I want white linens, I want fresh tables on the flowers. Like it's still a dining experience. It's a different, and neither of them are right or wrong. For Dick's Last Resort, like that's a great customer experience for customers that want that type of experience.
Right, right.
So anyway, my point is the
not
challenge I
me.
have with your
Which is
question
not
is
me.
this is
Know what
this
to get you
is
for Christmas.
Actually, I can see what you're saying.
right. This is the
I get it.
benchmarking trap. That it's like,
Yes.
oh,
where I
well,
went
if I'm
there,
in
too.
this industry, I need to do this in this way, and it's gonna be right. But what matters more is that I understand who are the customers that we're looking to serve. What's our strategy as a business, and how do we design something that meets our business goals, which should then effectively please our customers or whatever it would be.
And so the benchmarking, what you're saying is the benchmarking isn't as important as really understanding your customers.
Yeah, you have to be
Yeah,
willing to
it's-
say, like, when a customer's upset, like, there are moments where what they're upset about is, like, honestly, they're not our target audience to begin with. So they probably didn't have a great experience, right? Like, I hated Dick's Last Resort. I didn't know before I went that that's what I was going
Right.
into.
Well,
I would have never chosen that. I know I'm not a funny person. I don't enjoy that. I don't
Right.
have a good sense of humor.
You can get gas
Duh.
at like BP, or you can go to that Buc-ee's. Have you ever been to Buc-ee's?
Buc-ee's is a whole thing.
Holy smokes! Yeah, that's a totally different.
I don't know what
but
that
you're-
is.
Justin's family's more of a Wawa
I don't know what
family,
Buc-ee's
like a
is,
Schultz
I'm sorry.
family.
Well, I mean, we could talk about. I know Buc-ee's Walnuts. My family has never been there, and I almost did one day we were looking for something to do. I was like, I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna drive 2 hours each way, and we're gonna experience Buc-ee's. Because
What is
I'm a
it?
customer experience
gas
nerd.
station with like 100 gas pumps, but that's not it. Then you walk in, it is, how do you even explain it? It's chaos.
It's a gas
So-
station?
Yes,
station.
but here's a couple things we need to understand. It's not about a gas station though. So what is one of the worst? If you stop at a gas station, what is one of the worst parts of the experience?
Going to the
Pumping
bathroom.
the gas?
The bathroom. They decided we are going to
I
start.
don't like touching the
we
gas
are going to
valve.
start there first. Like I would probably eat a Buc-ee's brisket taco off of the floor of their bathroom. It is that clean. They've got like.
I don't know that I'd drive 2 hours for a clean bathroom, though. What
I thought
else
you
they
were.
got?
but it's-
It was you weren't worried about me eating the taco off the floor, but the drive. But here's that. So it's not about going out of your way for it. But that was it. It's about designing an experience where they understand the importance of some of those conveniences,
Right.
and have done just very intentional decisions around what that means. And you mentioned this earlier of like it wasn't right for you, and maybe it's not the ideal customer. Like that means that businesses have to say no to someone, and I think part of the problem all of us face as customers is that businesses are trying to create an experience for everyone, and as a result, nobody wins.
Yeah.
You can't. You have to narrow. You have to be able to say, like, I'm sorry. We did it. We're like, we offended all of our people that were probably over a certain age demographic. Because we're like, we're getting rid of all those departments. It isn't cool. We're cool. Like, we're not doing that anymore.
Let me ask you this, like, so
Yeah.
what about, so giving everyone the same customer experience is basically unacceptable because you've got different markets that you sell to potentially. I'm thinking selfishly, at Vanica, we sell to professional size markets, which, are a smaller kind of group of users, like smaller companies. And then we sell to enterprise and strategic accounts, which are much larger with hundreds of users or whatever. The way that we treat them should be different or might be different. Like some may prefer self-service. Maybe it doesn't even matter the size of the accounts. Maybe it's just their communication preferences, what region of the United States they live in, like how they communicate internally within their own company. Like they may prefer self-service over talking to a person, or they may prefer Zendesk or email over self-service. So I guess what I'm asking you is like, how do you determine whether or not you create different experiences for your customers, or if you stick to one customer experience for everybody?
Yeah, loaded question, Lisa. I mean, look, that's a big part of your strategy as an organization is around like what do we want to be known for. I think about travel. That they've made like an entire thing out of loyalty, and we all like some of us to the point like. I was talking to a friend who just did a mileage run because they didn't want to lose the level of service that they get as a result of their status. And
That is hilarious. They literally got on a plane and went through an airport and took a flight just to get status.
I've done
They
this
probably have a
in the
higher
past
status than
too.
me.
That is
But
hilarious.
but part of that's saying like, hey, we know, and there are things that you can do to try to figure this out, and maybe it's recognizing that we're trying to drive higher lifetime value out of these customers, or we know they automatically have a lifetime value. We might know that, hey, maybe that customer themselves doesn't spend a lot of money, but based off of who they are, they're really good at attracting, 4 to 1 in terms of our other customer bases aren't as good as being promoters or whatever it would be. So maybe you want to invest there. It could also be kind of to the complete opposite, saying like, hey, everybody gets the same level of experience because we want to monetize higher levels of service. So there was one tech company a number of years ago that they intentionally made every customer wait on hold for at least an hour, and the entire time you were listening to a service that, hey, for an additional fee, press 1 to pay an additional fee, and you can talk to somebody immediately. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it was part of their strategy. I don't know how it worked for them or not. I never looked at their books, but anyway.
It's a strategy.
It's a long-winded way of saying like, it just depends on what are the advantages or disadvantages to you in terms of treating everyone the same or treating everyone different.
I think when you think of like treating everyone different, I think of more just like in the general like sense of how they interact with our people when they do interact with our people, but also knowing that there needs to be a few different customer choices, knowing that there's a variety of needs too. So I always think of that too, because my old business, you know, we knew not everyone walked in the door wanted a commission salesperson that outfitted them from head to toe. Did we provide that? Did we have personal stylists? Absolutely. But that some people just needed to do a quick and easy return, and so we stuck the service bars right in the middle of the first floor as they entered the store because it was speed and convenient. So it's like, but both of those people should have been nice, friendly, welcome to our store, efficient with their store. You know, so it's like the human beings kind of had the same general ways of treating customers, but providing different experiences based on what they wanted. So that's how I kind of think of it.
There need to be those non-negotiables, right?
Right.
That's what that is to me.
Yeah.
It's non-negotiables. But whether you wait 2 minutes or you wait not at all could depend,
Yeah.
right? Or do I have a live person assist you, which is obviously a more expensive resource, or to your
Right,
point,
right.
do I have you help yourself?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some research that correlates employees being happy with customers being happy. I'm sure you have a lot of
Is this
thoughts
your
on this.
NPS thought?
Yes. So right now we're neck deep in discussing Net Promoter Score and how to integrate Net Promoter Score into everything that we do, from the sales process to potentially, like, let's say, offboarding a client. And then of course that translates into employee Net Promoter Score, which is something that we started tracking about a year and a half ago. For those of you that don't know, and you can correct me if I get this completely wrong, but Net Promoter Score is basically a -100 to a 100 kind of scale, where you have detractors that take you into the negative and promoters that bring you into the positive, and passive people that are like between, I don't know, whatever, right in the middle of a 1 through 10 score. They don't give you anything. So you really want people who are going to recommend your business to do business with the other people. Same for employees. The whole concept is you'd recommend my company is a great place to work. What are your thoughts? We kind of started to chit chat about this before the camera started rolling. We said, no, let's save it, because you had an interesting reaction. It's not one that I've seen when I mentioned NPS or Net Promoter Score. So talk to us about, we care from an HR nightmare standpoint about the correlation between happy employees, happy customers. If it's, is it Net Promoter Score? And if it's not, what is something else that we should be thinking about? Let's go.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's talk about a couple challenges with NPS, the intent of NPS, and is there a better way? So first off, the assumption with Net Promoter Score survey is that the person that I'm talking to would in fact be a promoter of this product, right, first and foremost. And so I want to give you 2 examples of businesses that had to measure NPS and it came to bite them in the rear. First is I got a phone call a couple of years ago from a woman who worked for a business called Giddy. Okay, she was head of customer experience for Giddy. Giddy is a medical device that helps men with erectile dysfunction. She said, Justin,
Giddy up.
I've been asked
Okay.
to measure
HR
Net Promoter
nightmare.
Score.
That's an e-
I'm
The
into
name of
it.
your company.
Shocker, guys with ED don't want to talk about the fact that they are using a device to help with ED.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should poll their partners.
It's not a bad idea.
Right? But
Right?
Net Promoter Score, because to your point, hey, there's a lot like this. Second, I got a call from a friend of mine, and they said, Justin, so we went and we put a new quality program in place, and we put a new survey program in place because we wanted to try connect is what we believe we're delivering as a great customer experience internally. Do our customers perceive that as a great customer experience? He said, here's the rub. Internally, it looks like we're doing all of the right things. From a Net Promoter standpoint, we are not getting there from our customers. And we've spent some time listening and looking at interactions. That particular part of the business was responsible for calling people and telling them that they had been denied for their mortgages. Shocker, I'm not going to do it. So first piece.
Or if I'm going to do it, I'm going to hit 1, I hate you.
Right. So
Yeah.
so the first piece there is there's often a misapplication, or it's too broadly applied across an organization where it doesn't make sense. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is actually around the number system. So as Lisa mentioned, that you've got promoters, you've got passives, and you've got detractors. And the scale, and this is actually the people who created Net Promoter Score, recognized that people were kind of misusing it in a number of ways. And in part, people don't actually, like, they could actually be promoters, but they fall somewhere within the passive category all too often, just because of the the scale rating, right? So it's part of like, okay, people are thinking that. Second, organizations are just looking at the numbers, not paying any attention to the verbatims. There's a ton of value digging into the verbatims there. The bigger issue is this. I don't care what you say you'll do. What matters to my business is actually what do you do? And so, gosh, I had a call similar to Net Promoter, but it was actually around hiring someone, and it was like, what was the likelihood on a scale of 1 to 10 that I would hire the representative that I spoke to if I ran a customer service team? Well, fortunate for them, I have run a customer service team, but most people taking their survey haven't. And so that's an awful question, because if you've never run a customer, like, I don't know what you care about from a customer. Like, what are we doing? So that's one of the I guess the underlying things with Net Promoter is like, a lot of people wouldn't actually like, they might love your brand, but they might not ever like tell somebody about it for a number of reasons. Right, so that's the bigger issue. The second then comes down to like, why are we actually doing this in the first place? Like, why are we actually measuring Net Promoter Score? When I ask organizations like, what are they trying to achieve and how do they think Net Promoter Score will help them there, help get them there? Often it's poorly articulated, or there's a number of things that are way better. They might be trying to say, hey, we want to understand how difficult it is for our customers to do whatever, right? It's a very clear use case for trying to survey. Now you can say, okay, well, let's actually do something that's more applicable there. And that, then I'll step off my soapbox and let you all respond. But it's like, surveys are really best suited if we have a really clear use case, and that is going to vary department to department, team by team, and one size fit all, which is what I feel a lot of organizations like get comfortable throwing NPS in. Like, it doesn't actually do that. I think it makes a lot of people feel good when they walk into a boardroom or to a meeting, but it's not actually moving the organization forward.
Yeah, or feel really bad when you look at it.
Yeah.
So I'm like with you, because obviously we used NPS with customers a lot. But so many of them, I'm like, you gotta throw these out. I go, they gave us like, a 4, whatever you would get on a scale, even if you scaled it 1 to 10, you get a 4. And then the comments are like, I love this place. They don't match. There were so many surveys where the scores never matched the comments, and you're just like, people are just clicking through, and it was so broad. And I would say, I remember being a rack store manager, and I had the biggest store on the East Coast that had the #1% of increase on the East Coast. And it was middle of the range in it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great, my NPS. But I was a busy store, so customers had to wait in pretty long lines at that store. But you know what? They came in every day. There was a line outside when I opened my doors every single day. So I'm like, you know what? Sales tells it all. Sales tells it all. I have a great team of people. I'm like, screw this Net Promoter Score. I used to say to my boss, I'm like, don't call me about that anymore. I'm like, I'm not managing to NPS, okay? But I was like, if you want to talk to me about how we can make the line more efficient and we can provide quicker and efficient service, I'm all for the surveys that tell me that. But I know what I need for that already. I just need more registers and more people, and that wasn't going to happen. So it was one of those that doesn't always tell you what you need to know.
Well, you do need to keep a pulse on the customer experience somehow. So if not Net Promoter, then what?
I was gonna say, what would you recommend for another alternative?
Yeah, so for the customer experience, to me it comes down to first defining like, what are we hoping to learn or affirm or test or change right here, right now. And I would rather see organizations use a 1 to 3 question survey that is very focused, that runs for a period of time for a given customer segment, and that be it. Like, I'd rather see you do 12 surveys in a year, but each month you are getting meaningful insight on a specific initiative that you are moving things forward than something else. So that's the generic answer that I have.
Yeah.
The maybe more granular one is, if I were running a customer service team or a CX organization right now, I would deploy surveys that help me clearly find the sources of friction that are happening between the people we serve and our business today. That's the things that I would look like. And there are, so customer effort, is a kind of a methodology that was put out by a gentleman named Matt Dixon, if you're familiar with the Challenger sale or things like that. He had worked at I'm not even, I think HBR, I'm totally blanking now. Doesn't matter. Customer effort had kind of looked at the idea of like, hey, how do we reduce friction? How do we reduce effort that it takes for people to find? Because that's where a lot of frustration comes into. So, being really targeted on the survey, and maybe it is things like customer effort score, or just again 1 to 3 question surveys on like really focused initiatives.
Yeah, I think it's a great
good.
What
idea.
about, so I've never been in retail, but so do you ever, obviously sales is important, but what about, do you guys track repeat business, repeat customers? That would clearly say that something's going well.
Yeah. I mean, the beautiful thing is you don't need a survey for that, right? But I'm absolutely looking at, first off, are repeat customers a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah. Well, what's the answer?
It depends on my business.
I say yes.
It depends on my business, right? If I'm a technical support organization,
Gotcha.
right, I don't want to repeat contacts. In fact, there's an entire movement around one call resolution or next issue avoidance, which is saying like, how do I prevent you from ever having to contact me again? So that's one thing. But customer loyalty, growing customer value, like all of those things, absolutely. Spend per customer, like that's all stuff that can be measured.
Well, and the one thing that, and I see it in Leath HR Group, I see it in Vanica, two way different companies, right? It's way easier to sell more to a customer you've served before than it is to acquire a new customer. And so looking without surveying at things like customer retention rates and having very high customer retention rates, or that net revenue retention rate was a new concept for me at Vantica, which is something very common in the software world. It's like, okay, you subscribe to my software, but now you're just consuming more of it, whether through new user licenses or I'm developing new
Upselling
features
new
and products
products.
and you're buying them because you like me and you like my brand and you like what you're using already. So yeah, those are two interesting stats to always be looking at as well. For the record, we'd love to have any Leath HR Group clients back. And we do have, and Leath HR has a ton of repeat clients, which is in our case great.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a really quick story, kind of to get to your point of your question, and then maybe kind of put a bow on some of this idea. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to a buddy who ran customer and technical support for a drone company. Any idea number one reason why people called the drone company?
They were in the trees.
Drones crashed.
Fly away, right?
Fly
Up
away.
and away.
They
it
were in
goes.
the trees. Crash.
What is their obligation
Hashtag
to
giddy
you
up.
when that happens?
I don't know much about drones.
Too bad, so sad, want to buy a new one.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's it, zero obligation. He was in a meeting with another part of the organization. They said,
So the
hey,
drone just flew away?
it's gone. It's just
Was
gone.
it user error?
Always.
No one knows.
Always. But he knew that. His team,
Yeah.
his contact center and customer experience and technical team knew that. He believed everybody else in the organization did until he was in a meeting where somebody said, hey, consumables are down. Think batteries, blades, whatnot. They're like, why is this the case? He laughed and he's like, it's because people never actually get to fly. Like, they get the drone and it's gone before they need new stuff. They're like, what are you talking about? He's like, this is the number one reason why people contact us. He ended up working with marketing, with the product development team to change the packaging, to change the education they had around that. Over 6 months, they saw a 50% reduction in people calling with flyaway drones. Not only that, people were promoting it, they were spending more, they were buying more. They saw this bi-directional shift in the cost of serving people who couldn't be customers anymore, and now growth in revenue. When I think about the opportunity around data and surveying and like, are you having an impact, like how do you connect CX to like broader business things? It's like doing things like he did, right? And just being curious and willing to say, hey, we see what's happening for our customers every single day. How do we leverage that information to not just improve our customers, but the business that we serve? And I think we find employees that are wired with that curiosity and desire to help. If we put the right process into place, like really, really cool things can happen.
Yeah, totally agree.
Listen to your employees.
Yeah. Well, also it's getting to fundamental understanding of why do you have these tickets? Why do you have this volume of tickets? And if you can cut the tickets in half so these people can focus on fun things, proactive relationships versus reactive responses to tickets and support needs, that can be fun. So yeah, I think anybody that has a customer support team should go back and, number one, make sure their folks have the right tools, the right resources, the right training to do their job and know more than their user that's logging the tickets and asking for help. And then number two, like figure out the root cause on why you're getting the same tickets over and over and over again, because doing that is mundane, and that's a great way to lose employees, is like making them do the same shit over and over. So
And then 3, do something about it.
yeah, do something about
Once
it.
you know,
Exactly.
like,
Yeah,
what
just
is
don't
Yeah.
do the analytics and be like, oh,
Yeah.
now we know. It's like stop and change it.
inertia? That's it. Like, people just accept the status quo, and that to me is the real challenge here. Like, what we understand, like, once you've identified, like, what is the real cost of not doing something about it?
High, probably high.
It is.
Hey,
Sure.
do you want to answer a write-in, an audience write-in?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe
Oh, we have time for one?
We have
director
time
the
for
day.
one. This is fun because I invite every one of our guests out for happy hour after HR night.
Oh yeah, that's a good
we'll talk
one.
about
I
this
wanted
if-
to talk about that.
Okay, good, because you love skipping company.
I do. I love skipping company.
All right, so listen, this question is it okay to skip company events? I declined an invite to a goodbye lunch. I'm not close to that particular coworker, which I thought was hilarious. It's like, I'm not going to go to happy hour.
Yeah.
And I often don't attend company happy hours or other events planned outside. Did you submit this question?
No, I
Okay.
didn't. I didn't.
my
I'm
RSVP
confident
for
in
today.
saying I don't want to hang out with you outside of work.
Oh, man. My manager's not concerned if I don't go to these events, and I don't want to spend my limited free time or money with work-related things. I just want to go to work, do my job, and go home and live my life. But I'm concerned about the perception of impacting a future promotion, etc. Justin, what do you think?
I think that's like there's a bigger issue at play there, right?
agree.
That's telling me that there's either a bigger cultural problem inside of the organization, or if I was that person and like that's how I feel, like is this really the place for me? Because I believe that should you feel obligated? No. But if you're not going to most of the events and like it's because and the thing that stood out to me is like, I just want to show up, do my job, and leave.
Yeah.
That's
Red
to me,
flag,
it's not
red
about the
flag.
happy hour part. It's like, if that's your view on things, like, we spend more time with the people that we work with than our family and friends. So it's like, I get the wanting to be home, but like, there has to, for me and the hope of humanity, like, I
Right.
want there to be something more.
Well, I think that, I
The hope
mean,
of humanity.
obviously I sometimes go to things. I'll throw a bone to every like third or fourth thing because I can't never go to anything, right?
You're coming to Healthcare Heroes tomorrow.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
I'm coming.
You're coming to happy
it's because
hour.
I missed the last one, so I'm like, I can't say no again. See?
See, you
But-
feel obligated.
I know, I feel obligated.
But don't you have fun when you come?
Well, it depends how many cocktails are served. We'll see. But no, I mean, I'm of the sense of like, if your employees feel like this, then we need to say, well, how many of these events are there? Is it fatigue? And how much are we really asking employees to hang out with coworkers where they do already spend the majority of their time with these people in the workplace? So maybe they don't want to do that after work. And I think that that's okay. I also think it probably depends, like, well, what job are you in, right? Do you need to put your game face on and suck it up and deal with it because
You're
you're in
a leader,
leadership
you
role?
have to
Yeah,
go.
sure. Are we paying you $25 an hour to do administrative work? Then you know what? You should feel like I'm coming to work, getting a paycheck. As long as I'm doing really good at my job, then you really shouldn't feel obligated to come to the happy hour afterwards. So I think there's nuances there for sure. But personally, I do think people spend a lot of time at work, and if they prefer to go home after 5 o'clock when they're done with their work day and live their life because they want to go to the gym and they want to get to bed early and they have a routine, or maybe they have kids and dogs and spouses at home that they have different pressures. You know, I have a couple of organizations where I hear that from a lot of the employees, that because we do have a monthly kind of event and a couple other things here and there. And there's quite a few people that don't love the after hours stuff, and they feel like, ugh, people look down on me because I never come to this stuff, but like, I gotta get home. So I don't know. I'm like on the fence about it a little bit. And I also came from an organization where like we didn't do any of that stuff. So I never had to worry about it. We kept work at work and personal life at personal life.
life at
Yeah,
personal
we were very separated with
Some
that.
of the groups that I work with have a lot of social time.
lot.
And they're all kind of pals. They all pal around. And I wonder sometimes if I worked there as a true employee, I wonder if I would want to go to all those things.
Yeah,
to get the
sometimes
feed,
people
you
are
know?
like, I got
Yeah.
stuff to do. I do have an organization I work at a lot where they do a decent amount of like lunches and like different things. And there are some people who are like, I have stuff, I have to get this stuff done. Because if I don't, then I have to stay here for 2 extra hours. We're like, I don't have time to go to that like all women's lunch at
But
2
I
o'clock.
sure am
you
excited
know?
to go to the happy hour.
So they're
after
actually,
tonight.
yeah,
God.
some of them,
That's
they're
right.
like,
You're buying your own
I'm
drinks.
super dedicated, meaning I need to get the work done before I go to lunch with everybody. So I don't know. I'm like, I could go either way on it,
hate
but
to
I
post it.
am coming to the event tomorrow. There you go.
Beautiful. All right. Hey, we're out of time. On this note, you'll never see Amy on HR Nightmares again.
I'm leaving the organization. Too much demand on social function.
That's right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Justin, this was awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We
Thank
could
you.
talk to
Thank
you
you for
forever
having.
about this.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
It is super interesting and love your dynamic personality. It's awesome. You're a great guest. Tune in on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd love to have you subscribe so you get notified every time we have a new episode. Thanks again. And if you need an HR expert to supplement your team or help your team out, make sure you call Leath HR Group. We appreciate you. See you next time.